Now available in paperback and e-readers, The Temptation of John Haynes. Given to temptation, pick up this action-packed African-American paranormal romance. Get The Temptation of John Haynes in paperback and e-readers today. After losing her bid for a second term as mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot said that she lost due to racism and sexism. Now, Lori Lightfoot was the first black female alphabet mayor of Chicago, and she won election, I believe, back in 2019, and was supposed to be a so-called reformer. Unfortunately, there wasn't much reform as related to the state of the city of Chicago, as alleged by the mainstream media, which reported crime getting more and more out of control as the city was in dealing with the COVID pandemic. Now, Lori Lightfoot wants to blame her election loss on racism and sexism, but when I take a critical examination of the election loss of Lori Lightfoot, it basically is white supremacy setting up another black crash test dummy to go out here and fail spectacularly. Now, in a previous video, I talked about how white supremacy oftentimes sets up black bootlicks in order to fail, and this is what looks like happened here with Lori Lightfoot. Now, Lori Lightfoot on the surface looked like a candidate that would meet all of the diversity check boxes that white supremacy wants to meet as related to representing a minority, and what they do is send an individual out here who will represent all of the ideals that they want to push, but that individual, because they are so caught up in their feelings about receiving the attention from the white political power structure, doesn't understand that they are being set up for failure. Now, white supremacy plays a long game, and in that long game, what they do is wait 4 or 5 years to see someone fail, and they use that time to go out here and be able to create a series of talking points to speak against that individual. And that's what they were doing with Lori Lightfoot in their usual chess game, and sadly Lori Lightfoot could not see the subtle politics transpiring around her the same way David Dinkins did not see the subtle politics transpiring around him back in 1989, because back in 1989, David Dinkins, the first black mayor of New York, thought he would be able to turn New York around after 4 years of Abe Beame, 12 years of Ed Koch, and sadly 20 years of decline. But this first black mayor could not really turn anything around because the game was rigged from day one, and basically he was set up for failure, and he was set up to be the guy who was made responsible for all of the failures of previous mayors. And the same thing happens here to Lori Lightfoot. She basically was set up to take the failures of Rahm Emanuel and possibly one of these Daley family members, and basically she was supposed to be the black person who was supposed to get the job, but what she didn't see, because she was playing Candyland instead of chess, was she was basically being set up to be a fall guy, the same way David Dinkins was being set up to be the fall guy, to take all of the accountability for all of the failures of other previous mayors who had basically run the system into the ground. Now, this is the position that white supremacy loves to set black politicians up for, and many black politicians, because they are just so caught up in licking the boots of the white supremacists, they're not understanding, the subtle politics transpiring around them. Because what the white supremacist wants to do is go out here and find a black person to be the scapegoat for all of their failures, and because they know that the black bootlick is so eager for attention and so eager for approval, they will go out here running the race not understanding that they are passively being set up for being an empty symbolic leader by being the first so-called black a mayor or the first so-called black whatever. And aggressively, what these white supremacists are doing is setting that individual up to take the brunt for all of their failures and all of the mistakes that they have made running an entire city into the ground. And as that black person is trying to clean up the mess, what they don't see is that they have been, again, set up to be the failure, because what they're planning to do is make them the person blamed for the way everything is going wrong. And that's the other part of the attack on Lori Lightfoot, because what the mainstream media wanted to do was make it look like Lori Lightfoot could not be able to get the crime under control in Chicago. And that's where the media came in, reporting constant stories of crime and violence inside of Chicago, constantly reporting these stories and making it look like Lori Lightfoot was the face of incompetence. And this is what white supremacy does. They go out here looking to make the black person the face of incompetence and the face of failure, so that when they go out here and set up the next white or non-black person, what they can do is go out here and make it look like they are so competent. This is what happened with David Dinkins back in 1989. David Dinkins was the first black mayor, but over the course of his term, New York's mainstream media made it look like he could not get crime under control, and talked about the over 2,000 murders that took place under him running New York City. And they talked about how drug dealers were basically terrorizing neighborhoods and how nobody could get anything under control. And David Dinkins was made to appear to be extremely incompetent, even though New York City had been on a state of decline ever since the mid-1970s, when New York was dealing with a major budget crisis, and that budget crisis led to layoffs, it led to budget issues, and it led to the city basically falling into a state of decline under white male leadership. But many people thought, oh, the black man, because he took power, he was the incompetent one. And in some cases, what happened was they were not really able to handle all of what was going on, because they had inherited a whole lot of failure. And as they had inherited a lot of failure, they wound up getting overwhelmed. And the same thing happened to Lori Lightfoot in Chicago. You had a alphabet black woman who was elected basically because some people in Chicago wanted the virtue signal, and others basically thought they were going to get reform. But the whole thing is, the white supremacists controlling the political system knew what they were doing as they were playing their chess game. They wanted to make the black woman appear to be incompetent, and they wanted to send the same racist message they have been sending for years out here. And that message is, if you give a black person power, they will not be able to handle that power. That's been the message they sent back in 1989 when they elected David Dinkins. Again, they celebrated him being the first black mayor, but then over the course of his term, they derided him for being incompetent. They derided him for not being able to lead, and they derided him for not being able to get a handle on the chaos. And as the media was reporting on all of the chaos and the city getting out of control, they wound up making David Dinkins look like he was the worst person to ever be a mayor here in New York. And that's what they did. They set him up. And as they were setting him up for failure, what they were doing while he was having his term, what they were doing was grooming Rudy Giuliani to become the great white savior who would turn New York around. This is something that white supremacy does in its chess game. What they do is go out here and they will set up a black person to be king for a day, and then when that king winds up appearing to be weak, what they do is behind the scenes set that king up to be overthrown. And as they set that king up to be overthrown, what happens is this black person who thought they were socially and politically in don't understand they are the punchline of a cruel joke. Because, again, like Professor Black Truth talked about, many of these white supremacists, what they do is they love a long joke, and what they do with black bootlicks and women like Lori Lightfoot is set them up to be the punchline of their cruel joke. And as they watch them try to go out here and fix all of the mess that was made by these white leftist politicians, what they do is watch them fumble, stumble, and bumble and have a good old laugh at the expense of that black person. And Lori Lightfoot now understands this cruel joke, and now she wants to say, I'm a black woman in America. But the whole thing is that it doesn't matter if you, as related to you being black, the white supremacist will set you up for failure, and the white supremacist will set you up for failure, because that's their goal, is to prove that the point that they have been trying to make since the days of the antebellum South, that a black person is not capable or competent as related to being a leader. And what they do is go out here and actively set up an individual who they know possibly cannot do the job, and they set that person up, put them in that position, because they want to get a desired result in their rigged game. What they want to do is go out here and stack the deck against that black person, and they stack the deck against that black person because they already know that, yes, this person, they may be educated, but they're not really qualified, because they don't really have a good vision, and because this person is so caught up in their feelings about the attention they are receiving from many of these prominent white people in these white social circles, they can't see that many of them are in on the cruel anti-black racist joke that they have been playing on educated professional blacks for many years. Because many of these white supremacists not only play this joke in politics, they also play it in business, and they also play it in many other industries. What they do is go out here and they find a black person who they want to put in this position. They know that this person is really naive and that they're green, and all they're thinking about is going out here and chasing the clout of being accepted in these white circles. And as they're caught up in the attention they're receiving in these white circles, what they don't see is that they are basically being played like a pawn in white supremacy's chess game. And that's what's happened to Lori Lightfoot. She thought she could come in and reform the system, but her biggest mistake was thinking she could win a rigged game. She thought she was going to come in here and be a reformer, but there was nothing that she could ever reform. I mean, even in the face of trying to navigate the city through a pandemic, the white supremacists were working against her, and they were working against her with their media. They were working against her behind the scenes, and as they were working against her behind the scenes, they were making her look like the face of incompetence, the same way they made David Dinkins look like the face of incompetence in 1989, the same way they made Keisha Lance Bottoms look like the face of incompetence. Many of these black mayors, they really don't understand the chess game, and that's why many of them are winding up getting played like Lori Lightfoot. And her election loss, yes, it is due to racism, but the racism she doesn't understand is anti-black racism that the white supremacist plays all the time. And this white supremacist has been playing this game for over a century, and anybody who can see the snap count like I have saw it way back when I was reading the book Invisible Man. And when I was reading Invisible Man, it really showed how they set up many black bootlicks to be able to fail miserably, because what they do is go out here, gas you up, play to your feelings, play to your ego, make you believe that you are somebody who's going to be important in their business and social circles. And then what they do is have you go out here thinking you're going somewhere, but the place you're going is a predetermined place as related to failure, because what they want to do is make it where you go out in the most ignominious fashion, where you are presented as the face of incompetence, where you are presented as the face of failure, because they want to associate failure with being black, and they want to associate a black person as not being able to lead. This is the same racist ideal that was promoted in movies like Birth of a Nation, where they said if a black person got power, they wouldn't be able to do anything well, and they would have to go out here and clean things up with the Klansmen. That's what the Birth of a Nation pushed in its original story, and this is the message that they push in the subtle politics that are transpiring around Lori Lightfoot. And Lori Lightfoot, she finally is waking up to the fact that she was set up, but it was too little, too late, and it's always been too little, too late. This is the game that is played on black people who get into politics. They don't understand the bigger picture of the game. And the thing is, it's a rigged game where you're set up to lose. And the same thing that happened to David Dinkins and many others is happening right now, because what they want to do is go out here and groom a white person to come in to be the savior, or they want to groom some Hispanic person. I believe Mr. Superboy talked about there's a Hispanic guy that they're grooming right now. And again, they groom this guy, and then all of a sudden you'll be hearing stories about how the quality of life in Chicago is much better, how things are getting better, and how police are able to get a handle on crime. But most people, and what's really interesting here with Chicago, as I'm seeing it, is we're getting a slew of resignations of other prominent black people who were a part of her administration. And again, this is all about proving the white supremacist point that when you put a black person in a leadership role, that person is not capable or competent. And when you have a group of black people in positions of power, like we have here in New York right now, what they want to say is that if we give black people power, you're going to get nothing but chaos, you're going to get nothing but ruin. And this is a message that the white supremacist wants to present in their media in the most insidious fashion. And the loss of Lori Lightfoot is about making a white supremacist point be proven true. It's about proving that if you give black people power, they won't be able to handle that power, when in actuality it's the white supremacist who rigs the game by picking people who he can get in front of and push his narratives on, because what he wants to do is push his narratives of anti-black racism by picking people he can get in front of and push narratives on, instead of competent, qualified black people coming out here and leading in the community. Because when you have competent, qualified black people, they can go out here and do these jobs. But the white supremacist doesn't want those people in positions of power, because he can't control them, he can't control the narratives around them, and he can't control how these people go out here and run and operate. But he likes to go out here and get black bootlicks he can go out here and get in front of. Then when these people fail miserably at whatever task that they're given, what happens is he then says, oh, this is why we should not give black people jobs, which is not why we shouldn't give black people positions of power, because if you give this black person any sort of economic or political power, they're going to run things in the ground, when in actuality they're dealing with a stacked deck, like you'll be dealing with trying to clean up somebody else's white incompetence, or you'll wind up trying to deal with a whole lot of resistance on the inside. And again, what they do is set this person up for failure, and then when they fail, go out here and turn things around and say, This is why we should not elect black people. This is why black people should not be allowed to have positions in politics. This is why black people should not be running public administration, because when you put a black person in a position, they just can't do the job. Again, all set up because the white supremacists, again, like Professor Black Truth has said in many of his videos, is taking both sides of the argument. And as he's taking both sides in the argument, he's manipulating both sides to work against whatever black person they put in that position. And as they go out here and manipulate both sides of the argument, what they do is go out here and watch this person bumble, stumble, and fail, and then write a whole bunch of articles saying this person really can't do the job, this person isn't fit for the job. And really what they want to do is put it in the minds of people that the black person is incompetent, and what they want to do is push the narrative that black leadership is incompetent. And this is, again, a dirty, dirty game. But many black folks, they'll be sitting there saying, oh, Lori Lightfoot lost because she couldn't handle crime. No, Lori Lightfoot lost because she didn't understand the white supremacist game. She didn't understand the subtle politics transpiring around her. And she didn't understand that you cannot go out here and win a rigged game with white supremacy, because the whole thing is, the biggest mistake you can make with a white supremacist is playing their game, because when you play their game, you play by their rules. And the whole thing with the white supremacist is the white supremacist doesn't really follow their own rules. And I talk about this in my book, Manginas. They look like men, but they act like ladies. What they do is keep switching the rules around. And when you play a game with somebody who is constantly changing the rules and is the one running the game, you are going to lose every time. And this is something that Lori Lightfoot did not understand. She thought she could reform things, but you can't reform things in a rigged game where you were already set up to lose, because she didn't understand the subtle politics transpiring around her. I talk about this in my novel, The Temptation of John Haynes, where John Haynes becomes the CEO of Morris Phillips. And as he's becoming the CEO of Morris Phillips, and he's dealing with the racism in the company, he realizes he can't play their game. He has to go out here and start playing his own game. And that's something Lori Lightfoot does not understand. That's what caused her to lose, and that's what causes many of these black politicians to lose. They don't understand the subtle politics transpiring around them, and they don't understand that the white supremacist doesn't play a short game. No, they play a long game, and they'll go out here and play with you for 2, 3, 4 years. And then as they're playing with you in the 4 years, what they're doing is changing the narrative around you. First, they celebrate you by saying, oh, you're the first black mayor. Then they talk about the problems over that course of that year. And then as they're talking about the problems in that year, they start making it look like you're not capable or competent of handling business. And then in that third year, they're grooming your critics to become your opponent. And then in that fourth year, as they're spinning the stories against you, what they're doing is preparing that person to go out here and take the position from you. And as you're trying to run for a second term and trying to run on your record, all you've got are a series of failures that were already set up as related to the narratives they were trying to spin. And as they're going out here spinning these narratives in that third year, and it goes into the fourth year of your re-election, and your re-election is basically set up to lose because they've already groomed your opponents. And again, it's controlled opposition, and this controlled opposition is set up to go out here and be able to take you out. And that's what happened to Lori Lightfoot, because again, she was too busy playing Candyland when these white supremacists play chess. And you have to be 7 steps ahead of this white supremacist if you hope to ever beat him at his own game. Unfortunately, many are so caught up in their feelings about the attention and clout that they're getting about being in white social circles that they wind up picking up a pink Candyland card and thinking that they're going to win in a chess game, whereas the white supremacist already has played them pawn e7 to d5, and as they're playing them in chess, they're holding up the Candyland card, which is pink, and they're thinking that, oh, I got this pink card and I'm going to be able to move forward, but you're not moving forward because they've already got you as the pawn, they've moved you up, and they're using their knight to eventually take you out on the next move. That's what happens to many, again, black bootlicks like Lori Lightfoot, who think that they can go out here and play the white supremacist game and be the first so-called person to represent as related to running a political system. Again, I will repeat it once more. They don't understand the subtle politics transpiring around them, and they don't understand that you cannot go out here and play their game and win because the white supremacist has already rigged the game and they've already picked you as the perfect pawn they can get in front of. And you have Lori Lightfoot saying, oh, I'm a black woman in America. Well, and saying that was the reason. No, again, the reason why you lost was because you didn't understand those subtle politics transpiring around you, and you didn't understand that the white supremacist was already ahead of you, and once they got ahead of you in this rigged game, they let you win the first round, but then they wound up getting the checkmate, and that checkmate ensured that they would be able to go out here and put another white person in power and be able assured to put that person in power and maintain white power for an extended period of time. Because here in New York, David Dinkins, after he failed spectacularly as the first black mayor, we didn't get to see another black mayor until 2021, and with the failure of Eric Adams, I guarantee you we won't see another black mayor for another 50 to 60 years, because what the white supremacist does is burn the idea of black incompetence into most people's minds, including black people. And as they burn the idea of black incompetence into somebody's mind by putting them through trauma like a high crime city and a city where everything is just dirty and just out of control, what they do is use this trauma to burn it into people's minds not to vote for black politicians. And that's what they're doing right now here in New York City with Eric Adams and Jumaane Williams and Alvin Bragg. They're burning the idea in people's minds that if you hire and elect a black person, they are incompetent, incapable of leading, and this is why we need to go out here and elect qualified white people, because only white people can go out here and maintain a quality of life. This is the message that the white supremacist wants to send with Lori Lightfoot and many of these other black mayors. But sadly, many black people don't see the chess game because they don't think long term. They don't really have a vision. They really don't really understand that there's a much bigger picture. And if you don't understand the bigger picture and don't understand, again, the subtle politics in that big picture, you will wind up trying to win a rigged game instead of playing a game on your rules and your own terms. Now, if you want to learn more about the subtle politics that is going on around black people, you can pick up my novel, The Temptation of John Haynes, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Temptation of John Haynes at other online booksellers like Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. And that book will show you how insidious this racism is in corporate America and politics, and it will show you how insidious things are as related to keeping black people in a state where they cannot gain any sort of economic or political power. And if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Coming to paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Godbreaker. The man who rules the world takes on the Asgardian god of thunder in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Pre-order your copy of John Haynes' Godbreaker at online booksellers today. Now available on Lulu. John Haynes at Death's Door. The man who rules the world takes on the Greek god of death in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes comic book. Get your copy of the first John Haynes comic at lulu.com today.